Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Neha Bhise, and I'm a part of Team Umang. So, Umang is basically an initiative of the doctors, by the doctors, and for the doctors to help support and prioritize themselves and help them improve their quality of life. Team Umang wishes to support medicos on various aspects in their life. It is a space for rejuvenation, appreciation, interaction, where people listen, express, and appreciate, and many more emotions are expressed on the same platform. It also gives a platform to interact with those who inspire you, to make you feel joyous and radiant. Today is our ninth session, sir. So we would like it is my privilege to welcome Dr. Bharat Watwani, sir, the Ramon Magsaysay Award winner. And as a humble person that he is, he feels that the best part would be that he introduces himself. So over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everyone. Since the slide presentation is a little long, I would rather begin directly with the talk itself rather than introduce myself. Yeah. So I and my wife are both psychiatrists who are dealing with the cause of the wandering mentally ill on the streets of India. This is the kind of people that we are dealing with. They are all on the roads without their own consent. They are all on the roads wandering around because of mental illness, which has not been treated, which has not been picked up, which has not been analyzed. And you see hundreds of them, thousands of them, literally, on the roads. They are invariably half naked. They are with stinking torn clothes, lost in their own world, muttering to themselves, long matted hair, afflicted with psychiatric illness. That is the key of the whole thing, that they are afflicted with psychiatric illness and they are stripped of all human dignity. But we believe that they are humans nevertheless. Now, nobody is born a social worker as of day one. You see this guy, he's depressed, the one on the sitting down on the ground, and the other guy is having active hallucinations, hearing voices. You see the pathetic condition in which this female is on the roads, with a helmet on top, with a wheel, something in her hand, unbelievable. And this is the simple core slide of what we do. We pick them up from the roads, bring them to our center, treat them. The moment they become better, we trace out their address and finally reunite them. This girl has been picked up from Bombay and has been reunited with her sister at Chhattisgarh. You see this gentleman on the road. Nobody would have touched him with a 10-foot pole. Our social worker approached him, convinced him, as you can say, got him into the ambulance. The person became better and he ends up back in his house in Karnataka. This is another patient who's on the roads. And this boy turned out to be a chartered accountant by profession. So you have patients who are doctors, you have patients who are chartered accountants, you have patients who are lawyers, qualified people on the roads because of mental illness, and nobody is doing anything. There is a poem by Thomas Eliot which says, where is the knowledge which we have lost in information? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? And where is the life we have lost in living? I refer to this poem purely from the point of view of where are we as doctors heading? We have people on the roads and we as doctors just pass them by without doing anything. So where is the life we have lost in living? That is a question that we have to address, each one of us. There is a pop-up which is coming every time somebody is getting admitted. Can you shut off that pop-up? Admin.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So where is the life that we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom that we sought for when we were studying in our colleges? And where is the knowledge which we have lost in the information? Now, like I said, nobody becomes a social worker on day one. The reason why I didn't give you my biodata right at the beginning is that my biodata is positively horrifying. I lost my dad when I was in the 8th standard. 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, first year science, center science. Literally worked it on my own in poverty, but struggling it out. In the inter science, which was in the good old days, I was second in the University of Bombay. Because both my brothers were doctors, I picked up medicine. They were already in JJ, so I also entered JJ. Now the question is, nobody was there at that time to guide you properly. Nobody was there to tell you what to do, what not to do. The moment I entered, I found anatomy and physiology very, very, very difficult. It was unbelievable. Rote memory was never my strong point, and it was like all hands up. By the time I had finished that second semester of the first MBBS, I had finished 1 year, I was in a horrible state. So in those days, the originals never used to be with the college. They used to be with us only. So along with the originals, I went to Institute of Cost and Works Accountant, ICWA. This was opposite Excelsior Cinema, if you are familiar with where JJ is, near New Empire. So I went and joined that college. And for 6 months, I did the first semester of ICWA simultaneously. I used to go by bus from JJ to Excelsior in the evening, attend those part-time classes, and I cracked the exam. While I just barely passed my anatomy and physiology, just barely. Then you enter second MBBS. When you enter second MBBS, you come across patients first face to face. And JJ in those days, and JJ even now, is chock-a-block with patients. Patients were on the floor, patients were everywhere. And somehow looking at their plight, looking at that horrifying condition in which they were, because of their illness, because of their poverty, and because of the overcrowding, somehow I kind of empathized with them because I had gone through a bad phase again, like I said, because I had lost my dad earlier. So I couldn't understand the diagnosis. I was very bad. But I could play with them. I would play Antakshari with them. I would sing songs. We would play carom together. And I felt, no, this is a profession in which I need to be. With great difficulty, I passed second MBBS. Pharmac was a scorcher. I mean, I wonder why Satosuka wrote that book, with all those various side effects, 550 side effects of every drug. God bless him. It's unbelievable. Third MBBS, I came across one guy, my senior, he's no more now, one Dr. Rajan Garg. And he helped me he pumped in a lot into me, and somehow I just barely scraped the third MBBS. Barely. He was aghast. He felt I would do well, but I didn't. So I had had enough of studies. I didn't want to touch a book ever again in my life. I picked up general practice. I went to Vasai and started general practice. 1.5 years of general practice, and I was not doing well. So there I was a disaster in general practice also. So with my tail between my legs, I came back. My brother, we all needed money very desperately because we were short. So my brother got me a non-medical job as an administrative officer in Institute of Energy Management. I was getting paid 1,500 rupees. That was it. Until one day, what happened was that one of my seniors, one Dr. Ghanshyam Bhimani, who was a psychiatrist, told me that there's a post vacant in diploma in psychiatry in JJ. So I said, look, brother, it's like this here. My family desperately needs this 1,500 which I'm getting. Can you do something about that? He said, yes, I can do something about that. So Dr. Mrs. Setna, who knew Dr. Bhimani well, she did not realize that I was not coming. God bless her. But Dr. Bhimani sorted that I got the attendance, I got everything signed, everything. And I appeared for the first part of DPM with 15 days of effort. Luck being what it is, I cleared the first part of DPM. I continued with the non-medical job. Until I came into DPM Part 2 exams. Again, I studied for exactly 15 days and I was through with my DPM Part 2. I was a qualified psychiatrist with having seen exactly 6 patients, which are all exam cases in the ward of JJ, due thanks to Dr. Ghanshyam Bhimani. Then came the next turning point. Suddenly somebody said that there's a post vacant in GS Medical College of MD Psychiatry. And I ended up doing MD Psychiatry in GS Medical College, and I was posted in Cooper Hospital. In Cooper Hospital, luck being what it is, my lecturer was somebody called Dr. Smita Ganla, who had already cleared her MD, who had already got a gold medal in MD psychiatry. And I was the houseman, and she was my lecturer. And she was very good looking in those days. She's very good looking even now, but we fell in love. So that became the craze of Cooper, that the lecturer has fallen in love with the houseman. Now, once you fall in love, what happens is, your hormones take over and your intelligence goes for a toss. But I realized that, look, here is a girl who's MD psychiatry, gold medalist, and I'm going to get married to her. So there is no further point in studying. I mean, I have got right next to me a gold medalist psychiatrist. So I gave up studies altogether. It was the end. And luck being what it is, MD psychiatry, first shot I failed. Then I met my father-in-law. Rather, my father-in-law called me and he said, look, boss, it is like this. If you want to marry my daughter, you better pass. Otherwise, things are out. I mean, I won't go ahead with my consent. So I put my heart and soul into it, whatever little I could, given the fact that I was very weak at academics. I went to all the gods. I went to my Mahim church. I went to Mahalakshmi Mandir, and I went to Haji Ali Dargah, and I went to a Gurdwara also. And on the day of the exam, Anand Natkani, who was a dear friend of mine in those days, and still is a dear friend, came and helped me out. And he said that the case inside me, the long case, it is schizophrenia, though it looks like bipolar, but it is schizophrenia. I said, now that you've gone this far, why don't you do one thing? Why don't you tell me the difference between schizophrenia and bipolar? As of that day, I think he started losing his hair. Anyway, I cleared my MD psychiatry. And we had literally pulled in all our funds, all the gold which my wife had got, everything we sold, and we started off a small nursing home, which was exactly 5 beds. As simple as that. And this is the 5-bedded nursing home that we started. This gentleman whom you see is my father-in-law. He was a retired director of DMER, Director of Medical Education Research. Now, what happened was that one fine Sunday, when we were just sitting in a South Indian restaurant, we saw a guy across the road. And he looked like a schizophrenic. We knew he was a schizophrenic, but we didn't feel like doing something particularly for him. Until what happened was that he took an empty coconut shell, dipped it into the gutter water behind, the nala flowing behind, and he drank the entire thing at a single shot. Oh boy. Seeing that guy do that spontaneously without thinking what is right and wrong, we reached out and we asked him, will you come with us? And he agreed to come. So somewhere the human within us connected with the human within him, and he agreed to come. Had he not agreed, maybe things would have been totally different. When he came to our nursing home, we realized that he gradually started speaking English, that he was a BSc pass graduate. He had done a diploma in medical lab technology. He had come from Andhra Pradesh to Mumbai thinking he'll get a job. He didn't get a job. He broke down, developed schizophrenia, and was on the roads. In those days, the mobile was not there. We traced out his address. We sent a simple letter to his dad. His dad came running down, took a flight from Hyderabad and came. And his dad was a Zilla Parishad superintendent in a place of Kadapa in Andhra Pradesh. That made us think that, look, there exists a boy who's educated. There exists a parent who's educated. But still, because there is no awareness of mental illness, whatever, there's nobody dealing with the people on the road. That became our first case, and gradually things went on moving. This is our first newspaper, you can say. Which was 1991, we had picked up somebody who belonged to Srinagar in Kashmir. One phone call and his parents had come rushing down. He sent me a beautiful letter. The last para is excellent. He said, Dr. Sahab, we repeat our sincere thanks to your good self and to Madam Dr. Smita Atwani and for the benevolent action you have done for us. We are eagerly awaiting the occasion when you will find some time to visit Kashmir, which though apparently is in turmoil, is still a paradise for angels like you. With best wishes and kind regards. February 1991. And these are the moments which made us realize that we are in the right direction. We should continue doing. Samna covered us in 1992. And then in 1993, we came across a guy. The son of a private patient of mine told me, look, sir, my lecturer is on the roads. The lecturer was from JJ School of Arts. He was on the roads. We were aghast that somebody can be on the roads who's a lecturer, who's a gold medalist lecturer from JJ School. Again, the hallmark of our entire function has been that we have followed our heart. We have never really bothered to think as to what would be the right step and the wrong step. We went, brought him over. When we brought him over, this guy was a bad catatonic patient. We had to put a rice tube, we had to give him ECTs. At the time of giving ECTs, my dear friend Dr. Kowadekar, who's no more, came and said, "Where is the consent?" I said, "Look, boss, there is no consent. There are no relatives. We are doing this on our risk, and let's do it." He agreed, and we did. That guy was a turning point wherein, because of him, a lot of his colleagues, a lot of his well-wishers, a lot of his teachers came forward and said, "Let's start the fundraising." Huge. That was huge. 1993, and we had 141 artists from all over India who had contributed their paintings, including Raza, Bikash Bhattacharya, Anjali Ila Menon. Huge day. And it was inaugurated by Sunil Dutt. It was a huge, huge, huge success. With the funds, we purchased a plot of land in Dahisar. The newspaper articles kept on coming. This guy is a civil engineer from VJTI. Civil engineer from VJTI on the roads. And this girl is still coming to me for follow-up. This is us doing the reunions in the good old days. This is my wife. This is my 5-year-old kid. And we are in Jalgaon. We have gone in a car. Multiple newspapers covered us. And with that money that we had gathered, we purchased a plot of land in Dahisar, wherein we started our small 20-bedded dedicated hospital only to the wandering mentally ill. Jayantiben Mehta, very well-known member of parliament in those days, came down and inaugurated the thing. And she said that यह नरसिंह नहीं है, यह एक तीर्थ स्थल है, मंदिर है. But despite her having said all this, all the residents nearby went against us and said that we don't want a mental hospital anywhere in our vicinity. Posters were put out, banners were put out, handbills were printed, everybody in the whole area was distributed to children. And on a particular day, when my wife was alone over there, and I had gone to Delhi for some work, there was a huge procession which they took out and they said, "Dr. Watwani chor hai, gali gali mein shor hai, Shraddha Murdabad," and everything. Finally, they pushed her to the ground and things went haywire. I came back from Delhi, went again and met Jayantiben Mehta. She contacted the police commissioner. Police commissioner contacted the deputy commissioner, and the deputy commissioner posted a policeman 24/7 at the doorstep of our NGO. So you have an NGO which is doing social work 24/7 guarded by a cop. Those were the days. Now, not to be left behind, the residents went to court and they said that this thing has to be stopped. Newspapers covered it. Residents wage war against mental hospital in Dahisar. We went to court. Going to court was one big thing. I was in Borivali. The court was in town side, traveling up and down, talking to the advocate. Our advocate was Anand Grover, who is right now a Supreme Court judge. And the person in opposite was Dhananjay Chandrachud, who is right now a Supreme Court judge. Sorry, Anand Grover is an advocate. 1 year, 1.5 years it took to fight this whole thing. And for every day, we were literally at the point wherein we believe that let's stop the work. Let's not do this. Society does not want you. And if society does not want you, why are we doing what we are doing? Every day we were literally in tears. And to go there and you find all the residents gather around you and stare at you with hostile eyes and all that. Tough. Really, that 1 year was the crucifying point wherein either you make it or you break it. But the only thing that kept us going, was that if we would have broken down then, I believe, and my wife believed, and all of us whoever was involved, Dr. Bhimani believed, that we would never be able to look at a mentally ill person on the road, face to face, eye to eye. And we believed at that time that we would no longer think of ourselves as human if we were to let go. But I cannot describe to you, I mean, even now when I describe this, the whole thing, even that 1 year, remembering that 1 year gives me goosebumps. It's such a horrifying thing, that each and every resident, there were times when a journalist was there. He was against us. He put articles in the Times of India. Things went totally haywire, but we stuck on. And finally, the newspapers, the High Court said that the mentally ill roadside destitutes are as much entitled to medical help as any physically indisposed person. That was God working. But during all this time, in order to get some kind of encouragement and in order to get some kind of impetus, you start reading books. And I came across this brilliant passage, which has stuck with me since then. This passage is from Baba Sahib Ambedkar's The Buddha and his Dhamma, in which he has written, I'm quoting, men are born unequal. Some are robust, others are weaklings. Some have more capacity, more intelligence, others have less. Some are well-to-do, others are poor. All have to enter into what is called the struggle for existence. And if in this struggle for existence, inequality is recognized as the rule of the game, the weakest will always go to the wall. The weakest will always go to the wall. So I thought of it then, that if that mentally ill person is left on the road, and if we think that that is the way it should be, the weakest will always go to the wall. He'll never come up. Should this rule of inequality be allowed to be the rule of life? Some answer in the affirmative on the grounds that it results in the survival of the fittest. But the question, however, is the fittest the best from the point of view of society? And it is because of this doubt that religion preaches equality. Now the question is, when we talk of equality, we have multiple gods, multiple faiths, multiple temples, mosques, churches, gurdwaras, ministries, everything. We all of us fast. Some fast before Easter, some fast before Ram Navami, some fast during the Durga Puja, some fast, a lot of Muslims fast during the Ramzan, Paryushan amongst the Jains. But what are we fasting for? What are we fasting for as humans? We are fasting for a better dawn for our own. How many of us are actually striving to remove this inequality which exists? That I am a psychiatrist and that gentleman, because of whatever his luck, is the schizophrenic person wandering on the road. So where is the human within him and where is the human within me actually reaching out to each other? And I believe then, that if one looks at it this way, then where is that love? Where is that compassion? Where is that justice? Where is that tolerance? Where is the desire not to discriminate? Where is all that? I mean, they are soul-searching questions, but because I had all the time in the world, and I was in a very bad corner. So you reach a point wherein everything, your own philosophy, the philosophy of humanity, the philosophy of the gods, the philosophy of whosoever achieved anything like, come together and guide you and tell you that, look, this is the path. This is a difficult path. This is a tormenting path. Neither will be that well-to-do as to really kind of break even or whatever, but this is the path. If you don't do this, then where is the compassion? Where is the humanity? Is it not your luck that you are the psychiatrist? Is it not your luck that you got into JJ? Is it not your luck that you could start the practice? Is it not your luck that you met the destined person and you fell in love? And what did that guy do wrong that he ended up on the roads? So it is inequality. It is inequality, whichever way you look at it. Touch wood, I mean, the gods have been very kind when it has come to giving that courage to continue, but the gods have been truly kind. You see this, a principal is on the roads. A principal of a school is on the roads because of mental illness. Then came the second turning point. In 2004, my social worker suggested that he's no more. He just passed away 1 year back, Arvind Shenoy. He suggested that let's go and meet Baba Ambedkar. So we were all set. Let's go. We had booked the tickets. When the teacher who was teaching maths to my children said that, look, I'm a bhakt of Baba Ambedkar and I have to come with you, Rashmi Surve. So out of pure, simple decency and courtesy for the teacher, we decided to go by car. We went by car. Baba Ambedkar was not there at Anandman. He was there in Hemal Kasar, Prakash Ambedkar. Because we had the car, we decided to go to Hemal Kasar. When we went to Hemal Kasar, around 100 kilometers before Hemal Kasar, there was a guy who was walking in chains in the dense jungles of Gadchiroli, both hands, both legs in chains, and a schizophrenic. Macabre sight. So I naturally, the first instinct is that you get scared and you said, let go, yeah, chona. So I told my social worker, ask him that, will you come with me? My social worker asked him. He said, no, I'll not come. He's a Maharashtrian. He said, Kashyasadi, you so I said, chalo yaar, bala tal gayi. We went further ahead. The sun was setting. It was becoming dark, and suddenly my conscience got the better of me. And I asked myself as to what will happen to this guy if he continues to be on this road in this chained condition. There's not a soul inside. And I U-turned. And being a psychiatrist, I could put him, get him into the car. No, both his hands and legs were tied with chains. I had a scissor with me. I cut off all his clothes. I had a chadar with me. I put it around him. I put him in the car. Started off. Now, those were not the days of the mobile. Like this. Baba Amte did not know I was coming. Prakash Amte did not know. So I was literally trembling. I was like a leaf. When I went there, Prakash had just finished a massive OPD. And he said, I told him, sir, we are involved in this work. Just one request, just remove the chains. That's all. Now you see the humility and the compassion of the people. Prakash Amte called for a chini and a hathoda on his own and started banging. It took him 1.5 hours. A very delicate thing. And Baba Amte was lying on the floor. I was like, since I was putty, I was silent. Next day, I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I went down. What do I see? I see Baba Amte awake and tears in his eyes. He was crying. I asked him what happened. He said, whole night I couldn't sleep. I said, what happened? He said, whole night I couldn't sleep thinking that here is a man who's in chains and he's walking on the roads. And what has humanity come to? What has humanity come to? How can people do this? And I felt, I just visited Anandvan. I felt that 2,500 leprosy patients were there. He had got all the awards in the world. And despite that, he was moved to tears at the sight of a man in chains. That was compassion. And you realize then that a human can go that far. And the humanity within you can go that far. And he told me, Bharat, you're doing an excellent job. God bless you. What you've done is very good. I was with him for the next 48 hours. And jate, he told me, Bharat, whatever you're doing is good, but it's very small. Yeah. Bade paimane pe socho. And after that, every 15 days, he would call up and say, Bharat, where is the project reached? I didn't know what to do, you know. I'm hunting for a place and it's not that easy to get a place, big place outside. I had never really truly entered villages and all that and hunted around. I was born in Calcutta, brought up in Bombay. So every 15 days, the guy would call. I mean, it is one thing for a disciple to go to the temple. It is another thing for the temple to start knocking on the door of the disciple and say, where have things reached? Unbelievable. Unbelievable compassion, unbelievable humanity, unbelievable decency. Too much. At one point in time, I got so fed up of his call that I told my wife, "Budde ko kuch kaam dhanda nahi hai, mere hi piche pad gaya." But he saw something in me which made him continue. Maybe he saw that spark which I never knew existed within me, but he continued. And one fine Sunday morning, we got the spark and we started the ball rolling. This is in 2004. This is me with Baba Amte. And from his biography, one of the greatest sentences I've always read, I've always been drawn to this fellowship of pain. I think God created pain because without it, there would be no tenderness. It is very easy for a man to love God, but it's difficult for him to follow the commandment, love thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor. The herd doesn't wait for the wounded deer, therefore someone else must help. Oh boy, what a sentence. The herd doesn't wait for the wounded deer, therefore someone else must help. And that someone, somewhere, became the cornerstone of our righteousness. And we thought, we have to help, we have to help. This is the plot as the day I purchased it. This is the development. Somebody's speaker is on. Please. I'm flipping through the slides quickly so as not to take too much time. This is Prakash Amte inaugurating on Gudi Padwa Day 2006. This is Baba Amte's personal letter for me. And what I believe set him apart from all of the human beings was his compassion for the downtrodden, his understanding of the pain of human existence, his overpowering desire to reach out and try to ameliorate was the guiding star of his life. The word Shraddha comes from the Sanskrit meaning devotion. The logo of Shraddha, as you can see, this is the Hindu symbol of Lord Ganpati. This is the Muslim symbol of Allah. This is the cross of Christianity. This is the Ek Omkar of Sikh Punjabi. And this is the Parsi symbol of fire. Believing that all humanity is one, all faith is one, all suffering is one. This is my wife in the good old days reuniting. She had gone to Andhra Pradesh. She's, though born and brought up in Pune, she's basically a Telugu. Multiple cases, people on the roads. I'm flipping through the slides because time is short. This boy is severely depressed. This is a bipolar patient. This is another bipolar patient. But despite having done all this, what is the reality? The reality is that mental illness afflicts a whopping 197 million Indians, 19.7 crores as per a study by NIMHANS. 30 million of them afflicted with severe mental disorders. And India shining. 65,000 crores is the total health budget, out of which a paltry 40 crores is allotted to the National Mental Health Program. That's it. That is Apna Bharat. Shraddha continued its juggernaut for whatever it was worth. Awareness in the villages at the time of reunion was like I said, I'm going over the slides quickly. Now you see this boy. This boy was picked up. He was with us for 1.5 years. We could not trace out his language until finally we had a patient who came to us from somewhere else. He came to us from Chennai Mental Hospital. And he interacted with this boy and he said that, look, sir, this boy is from Punjab, from a particular district where the dialect of Punjabi is totally different. It's not the typical movie style Punjabi, very different style. We took his word for it. We took him home. This is the patient at the time when we came. This is after recovery, and this is the guy with his whole family. And this gentleman gave my social workers a donation of 1,000 rupees on the spot. That made us feel miserable. You realize that the patient has been with you for 1.5 years, and the only reason why he has not got home is because you don't have that social worker who can speak his dialect. So you're not able to communicate with him, and the patient desperately wants to go home. That made us realize that we should have social workers from different areas who are employed working. All these people are from an NGO run by a psychiatrist, Dr. Ramakrishnan. Very good NGO. But the point is they don't have the social workers who can speak different languages. So our staff goes there, picks them up from Trichy, brings them out to our center, finally reunites them. You see this. This is the lady. She was picked up from Chennai Mental Hospital. This is the gentleman. He's an orthopedic surgeon in Surat. And you have a guy who's from Iran and picked up from the roads. Such is life. Now, one may well say that, look, he's from a different country. Why get into all this mess? But you don't. He scribbled his name. He scribbled everything, went on, gave his phone numbers, wrote his wife's name, wrote his children's name. We had a guy who could speak Arabic, and so somehow we communicated. And when we started naming all the Arabic countries, when we named Iran, his face lit up, and we knew that he was from Iran. Finally, the Consul General we approached, and he said that Syed Mohsen Miraj Ali has informed you over telephone that the father of Mr. Miraj Ali is very aged and is not in a position to arrange for. We sent him at our effort to his native place in Iran. Multiple articles continued coming. This lady is the mother of a politician in Godavari district in Andhra Pradesh. So you have somebody who's well-to-do, but because of lack of awareness is on the road. This is unbelievable. 13 साल पहले गुम बेटे के लिए माँ हर साल सिलवाती थी कपड़े, लौटा है तो पहना है. These are the moments that take you forward. Bhopal. And then, of course, the Raymond Magsaysay Award happened to me. I mean, out of the blues, suddenly you realize you have received the Raymond Magsaysay Award. But having received that, and despite all the accolades, I believe that it was not an award that we truly deserved, or I truly deserved, or the institution truly deserved. At the end of the day, the statistics say that there are 0.15% of the population of India which is on the roads, homeless. 50% of them are mentally ill. So you have a figure of 10 lakh people who are on the roads and wandering around with mental illness. What did we do? What did Shraddha do? All that we did was picked up, treated, and reunited 9,000 wandering mentally ill with their families across India. What happens to the remaining 9,91,000? And you know you have done nothing, nothing. You're truly not worthy of anything. When we started off, I was all gung-ho, and I felt, no, we'll have multiple centers all over India, this, that. You're full of that energetic juice. Ultimately, what have you done? You have done nothing. So genuinely, when somebody says that, send me your biodata, the truth is that there is no biodata. It's nothing worth writing home about. There is no biodata. All that we have done is picked up, treated, and reunited 9,000 districts. That's all. Articles continued. This gentleman was picked up by me in the earliest days. This is his father, this is his grandfather. He's one of the few people who has readily acknowledged that he's a mentally ill person, and he has come down all the way from Pune to Bombay to give this interview. And right now he's a builder in Pune. And right now he owns a Toyota Fortuner. Oh boy, that's something. And he keeps donating. He has donated a Maruti ambulance to our center. Time magazine of the USA covered us up. Maharashtra Times covered. Multiple newspapers kept on coming. Gujarati Chitralekha covered. Now this gentleman, is one Devanshu Desai. While talking to me, I knew him before. While talking to me, he said that there was one lady who was there outside somewhere in his colony. And when he was in the 9th standard, he had seen this lady. And because he was a child in those days, they used to get afraid of mentally ill people. And this lady used to go on muttering and shouting and whatever and speaking to herself. When he took this interview, Devanshu was perhaps 45 years old. And he said that till today, that lady is still there. So you wonder, when you hear such stories, that what have we done as humans? What have we done as humans? A lady who must be menstruating, a lady who must be passing urine motions, God knows where, 35 years of a life are on the road. How far could an entire society go in neglecting the wounded within its own? And we as doctors are not doing adequate. We are not doing adequate. Whose responsibility it is? It is not the responsibility of the corporate. It is not the responsibility of the member of the parliament. It is not the responsibility of the prime minister. It is the responsibility of the people who know the subject, who should be doing. It is the responsibility of doctors who are supposedly compassionate, supposedly full of empathy, supposedly understanding what exactly a downtrodden is. We have been brought up in JJ, Nair, Sion, KEM, all these hospitals which are full of such people. Where exactly did we go after all that? We had started a center in Hyderabad. This gentleman is one Arjun Rao. He had helped out. He's the CEO of Value Labs. In fact, he still donates 2 lakhs a month. We employed 2 psychiatrists at a reasonably high salary. Things didn't work out. Somehow you don't get the wavelength of charity the way you would want to expect in your fellow brethren. Such is life. The Guardian of the UK covered us up. Now you see this. Sometimes when humans really connect, things go beyond words, beyond words. This is a lady called Sadhana Thakur. She is the wife of the current Chief Minister of Himachal Pradesh. In her Jilla, in her district, she came across a lady who was mentally ill. She brought the lady to Shimla Mental Hospital. Shimla Mental Hospital was already in touch with us. Our social workers went and brought her from Shimla all the way to Karjat. It turned out that she was a Maharashtrian. That lady was finally reunited near Nagpur. That lady was a Catholic. That reunion took place on the 25th of December, Christmas. And on the wall of her house is written, Jesus loves you. Oh boy, you couldn't have it better than this, that what you're doing is right and what you're doing needs to be done. This is the lady. These are my social workers. This is his child. And Jesus loves you on the day of Christmas in the house. Jammu News covered us up. Multiple newspapers now, of course, nothing succeeds like success. So every newspaper does go out of its way to cover us. Telugu, Reader's Digest covered us up. Oriya, this is Assam. You see this gentleman, he's my social worker. Every time he goes to Assam, the people are so loving and so caring that they give what is known as the Assami towel as a kind of token of gratitude. And now, during the COVID times, I mean, he must have reunited at least 15 to 20 patients of Assam, and the relatives have come down to Guwahati station, and invariably they brought this token of gratitude, the Assami towel. Himachal Pradesh. And this is one of the best newspaper magazines I've ever come across. It's a e-newspaper, The Better India. It covers everything that is great and happening and good things happening in India. And what started off as a total number of 47 reunions in the year 2006, in 2019, before COVID set in, had become 1,114. At one point of time, somebody asked me that, what is your dream? I said, look, if we reunite one patient every alternate day, I would be thrilled. But we went far ahead of that, and we were reuniting 3 patients on every single day of the calendar year. But despite all that, again, like I said, what is the truth? The truth is that this boy, who's the eldest son of these parents, this boy wrote an email to me recently, a couple of years ago, and said that my father is missing from the house because of mental illness. Can your NGO help in tracing more? This is the father. And he said that this is the last photo that I've got of me and my father together. That is the reality of the situation. And unfortunately, we have not been able to trace out this boy. So I'm wondering all the time that, look, irrespective of all the accolades, irrespective of whatever people may have to say, this boy as yet has not been done anything as far as we are concerned. I mean, you feel ashamed. These are again my thoughts, which I wrote down, that from the beginning of time, the world as we perceive it has always been a conflict between truth and evil, between justice and injustice, between the right and the wrong. Any genuine doctor, irrespective of his particular speciality of expertise, supports and is a torch bearer of the former. Whether we like it or not, we are the representatives of truth. We are the representatives of justice. We are the representatives of what is right and what is wrong. Where the stone throws into the pond of light falls, it matters not. Far beyond this are the implications of the ripples that the stone for hitting the water has caused. It is not individual patients treated by me, you, us, that we as doctors represent. It is the hope of a collective good within society that we represent. It is the hope of a collective good within society that we represent. We are the humans who have to take this forward. It is the hope that truth and God shall prevail within all of us, within mankind at large, and that ultimately you, we, all of us shall join in eternal bonding to the greater cosmos of a God's creation beyond. We are the chosen people. We are the chosen people. We are not chartered accountants. We are not advocates. We are not in business. We are doctors. We are human. We have to take this forward. It is our responsibility. I mean, I am fascinated by the struggle for freedom. And Lokmanya Tilak said that the real spirit is to make the country your family instead of working only for your own. The step beyond is to serve humanity. The step beyond is to serve humanity. A non-medical person has said this. A non-medical person has said this. And the next step is to serve God. Maneka Gandhi, though not in great books with a lot of people, but I still believe that she has a good soul. Good people form a chain, a Lakshman Rekha of social chain that protects all, which is where all of us should be heading. When I was conferred with the Raymond Magsaysay Award, the president of the Indian Psychiatric Association, Dr. Ajit Bede from Bangalore, said in a particular conference that he had never heard of Shraddha and he had never heard of my name also before. He made it out as if we were actually and truly altruistic. So that kind of made me think introspect as to were we actually altruistic? I decided no, that we were not altruistic. We got our joy, we got our kick, we got our prerna from the relatives of those people whom we reunited. I'll give you a simple case. In 2009, we had a boy who was from Bihar, social worker, Shani Rakhtar. He reunited a boy in the village in Bihar. Now that boy was a sole kid of his parents, sole kid. The mother because of the fact that the boy had disappeared, stopped eating, gradually became more depressed and gradually passed away. She died. And this boy reached the village exactly 4 hours after his mother died. 4 hours, that's all. And all the villagers felt, oh my God, if this boy would have come just 4 hours earlier, maybe he should have been saved. Then they said that, look, we are Hindus. Now it is an unwritten this, that in Hindus, if the son lights the fire, funeral pyre of his parents, then the soul of that parent goes into heaven. And they made that boy light that funeral pyre. And this social worker of mine was crying on the phone when he described. He's saying, Gazab ho gaya. Every villager touched his feet. Every villager, the sarpanch, the police touched his feet and said, you did a good thing by bringing. And at that moment, at that particular moment, you believe that the sun, the moon, the stars, the planet, our NGO, that boy, his mother, our social worker are in alignment. No two ways about it. This is Carl Jung's synchronization working overtime. And that fact that this could happen, it was not covered in any newspaper. We never got the Gallantry Award for it. Nothing. But, oh boy, that keeps you going. That keeps you going. So when you're in that zone of the emotions within you as a human and the emotions within that samne wala as a human, and something connects, everything else fades into insignificance. The award fades into insignificance. Everything fades into insignificance. Your emotions, that human within you connects to that human within that opposite guy, and you know what you've done is right. Let no one acknowledge. Let Umang never call me for a conference. Let IPS never call me for delivering a lecture. Nothing. It doesn't matter. What matters was that we followed our heart and we did what we were supposed to do. One of my favorite songs, I mean, somebody asked me that, why are you not, is this, that the award really doesn't matter. Na tha kuch to khuda tha, kuch na hota to khuda hota. Dubaya mujhko hone ne, na hota main to kya hota. So to think rationally and work never leads anyone anywhere. Believe me, it never leads anyone anywhere. To follow your heart, to follow your instincts, to follow your gut feelings, your emotions may also lead you nowhere. I mean, you may come across a patient whom you are unable to reunite. So in the outer context of society, you have done nothing, but it does give you inner peace. All along in this entire journey, if you have received anything, it is that we are at peace with ourselves. We are at peace with the human within us. The goodness of the action should bring about peace, renunciation, and emotional closure. That is what it does. Whether you're appreciated, whether you're not appreciated, doesn't really matter. And what is the hardcore reality of the India that we are looking at? The hardcore reality is that 363 million Indians are below the poverty line. 36 crores are below the poverty line, earning less than 32 rupees a day. The New Disabilities Act says that the number of disabled in India is 27 million. The number of people having mental illness is 197 million, 19 crores. And 110 million of the people are tribals. Dr. Arun Gadare, my classmate and a strong public health advocate, claimed that 62 million, 6 crores are added every year to the below poverty line in India because of mounting healthcare expenses. This is shining India. And our country bleeds for its countrymen. I remember Prime Minister Manmohan Singh set up a huge chain of institutes, Indian Institute of Science, Education, Research. My daughter graduated from there. This was a game changer for pure academics in India. But what did the majority of the classmates and majority of the people do? They went abroad and they remained abroad. So where is that sense of patriotism? Intelligence is being drained in bulk, in bulk. The number of Indian psychiatrists, you'll be shocked. The number of Indian psychiatrists in both the UK and the USA alone and individually are more than the number of Indian psychiatrists in India. Such is life. Again, I don't have that much time, so I'm just kind of going over this. Somewhere there was a question which was asked by Gauri, and she said that a lot of us go through emotional upheavals and emotional turmoil. So let me tell you something about myself. I have been through depression myself. So severely depressed that you're holding on to 5 strips of a tablet which you know guaranteed will cause death. Throughout the night, I've sat with those 5 strips and hung on. Now, but till today, I'm not 100% sure what prevented me from committing suicide or whether I will never attempt it again. This is a psychiatrist speaking. This is a psychiatrist speaking. That I myself do not guarantee that I will not commit suicide. The mind is too complex to be analyzed by the best of psychiatrists. The causes of human emotions are multifold, right from neurotransmitters to biology, to genetics, to early childhood experiences, to family support, society support, medications, your sun sign, your prescribed fate, your destiny. I'm the same guy who picked up a chain wandering mentally ill 1,000 kilometers away from home during my journey to meet Baba Amte at Hemal-Kasar. Vice versa, I'm the same guy who has not given a second glance to innumerable wandering mentally ill closer home, both before the ward and after it. The human mind is truly unfathomable. Moods, emotions, and thought processes are in a state of constant flux. I mean, this is another brilliant statement which I came across. Sant Kabir said, from that one light, the entire universe welled up. So who is good and who's bad? This is what I believe is the cornerstone of great social work and the cornerstone of the human within all of us. It is that two souls which are unknown in a medical field, two souls which are unknown. You don't know the patient doesn't know you. The two souls of the people collide. And after that collision, everything changes. My social worker went to Missionary of Charity, Baikala. Elderly lady, 80 years old. She reached out, touched her face and said, Mala ghari jaa, I want to go home. She was asthmatic. She had rapid respiration also. My social worker got so moved that without even asking me permission in a day of WhatsApp, Farzana Ansari is the name of the social worker. She brought that patient to Karjat. I went next day on the rounds and oh my God, I was psyched out of my wits. I said, who has brought this? What is going on? Because usually this is that we don't take in patients who are very elderly and medically in a bad shape because I can't handle them. I'm a psychiatrist and we don't have great medical facilities there. She said, I've done it and she sounds logical and she wants to go home. I was too stunned. My RMO who was there, he said, sir, Dr. Nilesh Matre, he said, sir, you don't worry, I've handled a lot of asthma patients, I'll manage. He managed. We continued 2 weeks, 3 weeks. That lady was literally tottering between life and death. One day you feel she'll collapse and the next day she went on and on and on. 20th day, she became better. When she became better, I'm a good coordinator. I told them, boss, leave in the night, take oxygen center, take a nebulizer, 2 nurses, 1 RMO, let's go straight all out, drive non-stop in the night. I gave them 2 drivers. 11 o'clock in the night, they left Karjat. 7 o'clock in the morning, they were in a village in Sholapur and she was reunited. And during my rounds also, she reached out and touched my face like this and said, Mala ghari jaa. That's all. Now, if you would have left that patient in Mother Teresa's home, she would have died. And Mother Teresa's home is supposed to be for the people who are dying destitute. Nothing wrong with that. If my social worker would have left that patient in MOC, nothing. She was not supposed to pick up a medically ill person. If I would have kicked her out of my place, nothing. I was not wrong in doing it. But everybody held on. All of us, all humans within the entire team held on. And that lady reached her home. I don't know how many days, I didn't keep track. I don't know how many days she survived, how many hours she survived. Perhaps she may have passed away immediately. Her dying wish was to reach that home of hers. Her dying wish. As simple as that. Now, you can take it, you can leave it. Not a single newspaper covered it. We didn't even bother to inform a newspaper that this had happened. It was beyond coverage. It was beyond journalism. It was beyond publicity. It was beyond PR. It was beyond everything. But till today, if I get depressed, I remember that lady and her reaching out to me and holding my cheeks in her hands and saying, Mala ghari jaa. Tumi माझ्या मुलगा मला घरी पाठव. Please, as simple as that. That is what takes you forward. That is what takes you forward. It is this which I find gradually eroding in the multitude of doctors which I see around and in the generations which are there, which are coming. That we are the chosen ones. I would have been a much better chartered accountant than I am a doctor. I would have been a millionaire, zillionaire by now. Maybe. I know myself. I know what I'm good at. I'm good at accounts and I'm good at maths. But the call of the human within you makes you want to continue to be a doctor. Believe me, I don't know even till today, 110% academically, the difference between schizophrenia and bipolar. And right now there is bipolar 1, bipolar 2, bipolar 3, bipolar 4, God only knows how many bipolars are. Somebody asked me that, have you read the 2017 Mental Health Act? I said, look, boss, I never read the 1987 Mental Health Act. I'm too old. I'm beyond reading here. Abhi jo hoga so hoga. Let's continue doing this. Don't bother about. Let's continue doing the work. That's how the things happen. Unless we reach that point, wherein we ask ourselves as to why did God choose us to become doctors? Why did God want that Gauri, Neha, everybody, all of us involved in Umang, all the people, all psychiatrists, why did God choose us to become doctors? We could have very easily been born in a village. We could have very easily been born anywhere else. We could have not had the brains to do this. We had the brains, we had the intelligence, we are the blessed few. We are the 5% of society who's blessed. In that minuscule few, our number is that. But we continue to struggle with each other like frogs in a pond, thinking that no, that doctor has got more practice, I've got less practice, that doctor has got an attachment to Leelavati, I don't have an attachment to Leelavati, and the ball continues. When are we going to understand that there are crores of people? I mean, you look at 363 million, that's 36 crores out of 130 crores who are below the poverty line and struggling with a daily income of 32 rupees a day. 32 rupees a day. When are we going to reach that point that we will start thinking about them? Therein lies the human within us, which very, very, very slowly is, I mean, I wish things were better. I wish things were better. That's all I can say. And I'm hoping. I mean, this is once in a lifetime that I've been given an opportunity to talk to doctors who are not psychiatrists and who are overall in a very mixed group. I don't want to lose this opportunity. Vice versa, I don't want to sound very, very preachy kind of thing. But this is us, yeah. This is us. Let's do something better. I mean, there is yesterday, 2 days back, I attended a Raymond Magsaysay conference, which was being held in the Philippines, a 4-day conference. I would just like to read out one para which I was really enamored with. You know, this is Emily Ebra. She's the trustee and chairperson of the Raymond Magsaysay Award Foundation. She has written, wherever you find them, people who have contributed to society, you can be sure that they started their journey as ordinary people, until they made a choice to make a difference. And that's when their journey as leaders began. Whether they knew it or not, they didn't even know it, but their journey as leaders began then. Until the work they did with relentless faithfulness and passion every day, which touched and uplifted others, eventually became their life. The work became their life. Somewhere along the way, having given so much of themselves, they became selfless. But because they became one with the people they wanted to help, their spirits in turn expanded and grew in awareness and understanding. And to be selfless, yet one with those who you serves as a good aspiration for young people. This is what I want to ask of you as doctors, that you serve as a good aspiration for young people by doing what you're doing in a much better way. These people who have contributed to society, not by wealth or power, but by sheer commitment to good. The little good they do, step by step, by the greatness of the spirit, they never think of it that way. And this cannot really come into play until we, all of us, start work. We do our stuff. So all of us doctors have to do our stuff. Simple message which I want to give from the heart, from my soul, from the bottom of everything. It is my prayer, it is my dream, it is my vision, it is my nirvana, it is my talk, it is everything that I could ever do for the medical fraternity. Let's do it. Let's not step behind and think, "Arey, iska kya hoga, uska kya hoga." Don't think from the mind, think from the heart. Go ahead and do it. Thank you. That's 58 minutes on the dot.
Thank you so much, sir. I think your talk was so inspiring, and I think it has moved many of the people here. And I'm sure that many of the people have lots of questions for you as well.
Welcome. The questions are welcome.
So I definitely do have a question, if I may ask.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering that, what is that point that triggers that mental illness to surface? Like you're saying that this person was a CA, he ended up on the road. So if he was a CA, he must have been intelligent enough to spend half his life, knowing what he's doing. And then at one point, something happens, and then, his mental illness takes over and he ends up on the road. So what is that trigger point that occurs, sir?
The beauty of the whole thing, the tragedy of the whole thing is that there is no trigger point. You can be sitting there and you can end up having schizophrenia. Today night, I'm sitting here, I can end up having schizophrenia today. It's literally like a heart attack or whichever other illness that you can think of. It is as simple as that. That is the tragedy. That a person does not have a single trigger point and still becomes a schizophrenic. And schizophrenia can affect somebody right from the age of childhood straight through, right up to the point that he's 60, 70. There are people who have disappeared on the road at the age of 60. They never had schizophrenia in their whole life. They already have grandchildren. That is a tragedy. So the reason why we are reaching out is we believe that these people are on the road not because of their own folly, not because of anything, but by pure, simple bad luck. It's like diabetes. One guy may require insulin as of day one. Second guy doesn't require insulin and continues with the borderline raised sugar for the rest of his life. Such is life.
So do you have like any particular helpline where, doctors can reach out if they see a particular person who is in need of help?
No, I don't have a helpline and we don't intend to start because it is very difficult to reach out to every call that you get. So what we suggest is that you can contact the nearest NGO which is dealing with destitutes, like let's say Mother Teresa's home, or you can try and get the patient admitted to a civil hospital, and then we can start moving. I think it is very difficult for our ambulance to come all the way from Karjat and reach the place and try and locate somebody. It's a lot of effort which invariably goes down the drain. So what we are doing now in the last couple of years is that a lot of NGOs all over India know that we are involved with this work. Vice versa, the NGOs don't have the staff to treat the patient. They don't have the doctors to treat the patient. They don't have the staff to reunite the patient. So what we are doing is we are picking up the destitutes which these NGOs have already picked up. And we transfer them to our center and we treat them and we reunite them. The advantage is that already because he or she may have received a month or 2 months of food intake, so their general health is a little bit better, and that kind of increases the turnover of our. So we are just literally like the exact psychiatric treatment you give and the person improves. And our social workers are brilliant as far as reuniting the person is concerned. So we have social workers, in-house social workers, right from Bengal, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, staying and interacting with Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh. So you need to understand that to get to the hang of the whole thing, you need a very good command over that language of that particular state. You need to know somebody who knows the local lingo of Bihar, not just the Bihari which is spoken in the movies, actual local lingo. That makes a world of difference. So you have a Maharashtrian who recognizes from the patient's ho. The moment the patient says ho, he knows that this guy is from somewhere from Kolhapur. That's how tricky it is and how good our social workers are.
So has COVID seen a surge of mental illness cases over the last 2 years?
Yes, COVID has seen a surge of mentally ill cases. Vice versa, paradoxically, the reunions which happened during COVID period are brilliant. I mean, the joy in the families which is there when they see a guy who they presume must have been dead by now because of COVID is phenomenal. It is just phenomenal. Literally, all the reunions are overwhelming.
I think Alpazara ma'am wants to say something.
Yeah. First of all, sir, thank you so much. Gratitude for coming on this platform, and you really inspired us in so many ways. So I just wanted to know, sir, it's always difficult to work for a cause like this, and there are difficulties, ups and downs, and you're surrounded by people who have so many issues. So how do you maintain your so to say, your energy levels or sanity, and that keeps you going?
I'm blessed with a very loving partner.
Oh, that's really true.
who handles up and downs with very great equanimity. But on a more serious note, I feel when you reach out and you read about people who have achieved a great height in terms of philosophy. In the COVID times, I read and the autobiography of Vinoba Bhave twice. It was brilliant. I've read a lot of Ambedkar books. Brilliant. So you realize the most important thing that you realize is when they are truthful in their own autobiography, they have openly said and openly declared that they have gone through difficult times trying to hold on to that, have that moral courage. So it's not easy, but you continue. You realize, well, Ambedkar had tough times. Vinoba Bhave had tough times. Everybody has tough times. Rabindranath Tagore had tough times. So when you read all this, you realize that the struggle is also common to humans. The struggle is also common to humanity. I mean, you look at Abraham Lincoln, I don't know whether you are aware, but Abraham Lincoln had clinical depression, diagnosed depression, recorded depression. Now, he was fighting for the cause for abolishing slavery and racial discrimination. 150 years are over. Has the cause still been addressed? No. Slavery may have gone. Has racial discrimination gone? No. Rabindranath Tagore wrote that into that heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. Have we truly awoken to that freedom into that heaven of freedom? No. So 75 years down the line, things are still struggling. I mean, I ended it earlier, but I had a slide which says that finally at the end of the day, you are moving with your own cross. You are moving like that Kolu ka bell on that thing. Anand Grover, the advocate who fought for us during the court case which I mentioned, he was struggling for 20 years with the cause of gay rights. Only last year, a couple of years ago, they won that thing. Now, for 20 years, the person is struggling, and his logic is very simple. If you are fighting for a cause, a social cause, it's a long haul. In simple words, it's a long haul. So unless you have that perseverance, and then you realize, look, if Anand Grover can do it, why not we can do it? If Indira Jaising could do it, why not we can do it? If Ambedkar can do it, why not? And there are so many people, there are so many social workers who are literally going on doing the same, trying to do good work against all odds. So you come across these stories, you come across these people. I myself have a tendency of going and visiting many NGOs wherever I go. I mean, there's a guy called Vinayak Lohani in West Bengal. He's dealing with the underprivileged school children. He set up huge centers in Madhya Pradesh, all over in tribal villages, trying to set up centers of mini education. Now, these are all struggles which people are continuing. You get encouraged by that. So if your exposure to that is very important. I mean, time and again in my struggle, I have gone and met Prakash Amte again, gone and met Baba Amte again, seen so many missionaries of charity homes. I visited all the missionaries of charity Mother Teresa's homes in Calcutta. Brilliant. You get moved.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you very much.
thank you. So on behalf of Team Umang, thank you so much, sir, for spending your valuable time and sending us on this inspiring journey. And I'm sure that we've taken your positive messages back with us. And I thank everyone for joining sir and us on this evening. And our sessions are every last Saturday of every month. So I'm sure we'll be doing many more interesting sessions in the near future. Thank you so much.
I find it a privilege and an honor to address doctors who are from different fields, different communities, different generations, different age groups, different specialities. This is once in a lifetime opportunity. When I thought over it, initially I was on the verge of refusing because the time was short, but later on I felt that this is an opportunity which should not go. And I genuinely believe, I believe from the bottom of my heart that we are blessed in being medicos. We are blessed. Irrespective of the fact that some of us may not have got that great a name or whatever, but we are blessed and we have to take this forward. We have to take this forward. So count on me anytime. I mean, you feel.
So is it possible to come and visit your center sometime?
Why not? All of you are welcome. Each and every doctor who has heard this talk of mine is welcome. I mean, the more the merrier. Bring your colleagues, bring friends, brings everybody. I mean, one of the things that we are having now, we are having various NSS camps of different colleges. In October, we'll be having some 63 nurses who will be coming from Bharatiya Vidyapeeth University in Pune. They'll be visiting. So you hope that somebody gets moved and gets moved by the plight. The question at the end of the day is not whether whosoever has heard this talk starts thinking of the man on the street. That's not the point. You may never look at a wandering mentally ill on the roads for the rest of your life, but there will be some cause, something that touches you, that touches your own inner emotions. You want to do something for the blind, you can do it. You want to do something for the handicapped, you can do it. You want to do something for the uneducated, you can do it. So it is your passion, your desire, which takes you forward. It is not at all necessary that you look after a mentally ill person on the road. No, that's not the end point of this talk. The end point is whether you as a doctor could be moved. In the Better India, I came across one example of a guy who's a doctor, who's a medico. Somehow he cracked the IAS exam and he cracked the IPS exam. And he's right now posted somewhere in Andhra Pradesh. Believe it or not, because he's a doctor, and despite the fact that he has cracked his IPS and is a police commissioner, whatever, he is doing a lot for that entire district from a medical point of view. Very basic. The tribals have got calcium deficiency, he sees to it replace. Tribals have got iron deficiency. You pick up a person from the road who's got a hemoglobin of 4, boss. Who's got a hemoglobin of 4. You go to villages. I remember once at Prakash Ampe's team had told me, come for a camp. I took 20,000 worth of all vitamins, calcium, everything. And everybody needed it. It's a simple thing. It's not rocket science. But that police fellow who is an IPS officer is actually doing it. I mean, it's extraordinary brilliance. I mean, commitment. And he's just an MBBS guy. He has done his IPS after that. He need not do anything. It is not within his domain. It is not job assigned to him by the government, but he's doing it. That takes you forward. That takes you forward. And the Better India, which the email magazine covers all these things. I mean, it covers remote people working in different areas of India who are doing great work, phenomenal work.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Lastly, I came across somebody who had met Prakash Ampe twice. And he said, I did not get inspired by him. How did you get inspired? Which led me to think that finally, the depth of the searcher is very important while seeking that inspiration. Do you really want to come across the truth? When you want to come across the truth, you come across people like who are doing this, who's MBBS and doing phenomenal work in a district in Andhra Pradesh. And with all the power that he wields, he's doing it. So at the end of the day, the depth of the search depends upon you, your own inner voice, your own inner conscience, the human within you, whether you want to reach out to that man, to that human being who's there on the other side of the road. That is a very important point. I mean, it struck me so weird when this guy told me that, look, I met Prakash Ampe twice and nothing moved me. I mean, I didn't feel like coming back to my hometown and doing any social work. So internally, there has to be that desire to want to reach out. It is the voice of your conscience. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror for that entire 1 year when we were fighting that court case. I simply couldn't. I felt if we give up, oh my God, we are through. Whole life is gone. Is it fair to the person on the road? Is it fair? Is it just? Is it correct? That is what takes you forward.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here.
God bless you. Thank you very much.